Would you like to know how to use storytelling in business so that you can turn your audience into dedicated raving fans? How would that affect your business, having all those raving testimonials? Would that impact your sales figures? It's entirely possible by learning to master the art of storytelling for impact in your business. And in this episode, we'll be exploring how you can use storytelling to engage your audience at a deeper level, drive more sales, make a lasting impact, and we'll be giving you our super ninja tips to do this. So stay tuned. This is Momentum Maker Podcast, and I'm awesome Angie Engstrom, honoring the awesomeness in you.
And I'm Gita Adgar. And yes, you're right, Angie. Storytelling is so powerful because have you ever found yourself completely captivated by a story? Maybe it was a book you couldn't put it down, or perhaps it was a movie that just had you on the edge of your seat, or it could be a personal story someone shared with you that just stuck with you for a really long time. We've all tried something like this, right? And stories, they can be so captivating. So, what if you could harness that power for your business? It's really sort of mind blowing just to try to imagine the possibilities it could create and open up, right?
Yes, so true, Gidi. Because as humans, we're wired to respond to stories. Biologically speaking, it's how we make sense of the world, how we remember information, how we connect with other people. Let me give you an example to illustrate the power of storytelling. Imagine that you're speaking in front of a room full of your ideal audience and you want to share your unique expertise with them, and you could either choose to just start talking about the nuts and bolts of your message, listing facts, and eventually telling them what to do and what to believe, and just give them lots of instructions to follow, and they'll just buy from you and get their desired result, right?
Yeah, it would be great if it was that easy. But it's not. Big surprise. Okay, the problem is that when we tell people to do something, resistance usually kicks in. It's sort of like trying to tell a teenager to do something. And being the mom of a teenage daughter, I know exactly what that feels like. Have you ever had a teenage son or a daughter, or perhaps you can remember being a teenager yourself? Do you remember? Do you remember that? And I do. And when some adult, perhaps it could be a parent or a teacher, would tell you to do something, how would you react? Would you just do it, or wouldn't you do it? Perhaps you would be thinking something like, "I'm 100% not gonna do that." You know, Sometimes my daughter, she even verbally says something like, "Hey, mom, just because you told me to do that, I won't do it. I was gonna do it, but now I won't do it." And yeah, teenagers, they can be sort of a hard crowd sometimes. But the point is, people, we don't like being told what to do. So if you really want to move your audience, you need to make them feel it instead of telling them it. So that's actually the power of storytelling, because stories, they connect.
Yes, studies actually show that stories have the unique power to allow the brain to relax and connect emotionally without feeling pressured. So when you tell a story, the audience doesn't feel like they're being told what to do. Instead, they're drawn into the narrative and their defenses drop.
Okay, so let's break down the four top reasons why storytelling is so effective. Number one, stories create emotional connections. When you share a story, especially one that's personal or relatable, you're actually creating a bond with your audience. And this bond makes your message so much more powerful, more impactful. Number two, stories are remembered because emotions, they're strongly tied to our memories. So when content stirs those deep emotions, it'll be etched in their minds, making it impossible to forget.
So that emotional connection, and then, the remembering. And number three, stories make complex ideas simple. By telling a story, you're helping your audience understand and relate to your message without overwhelming them with information. And then number four, stories inspire action, because when people are emotionally engaged, they're more likely to take decisive action. It's not about telling your audience what to do, it's about guiding them to the conclusion themselves, the conclusion that you want them to reach through the narrative that you share, but they're coming to it themselves through your story. So basically, stories connect. Now, let's dive into some ninja tips for creating storytelling that will engage your audience on a deeper level, drive more sales, and make a lasting impact.
Yes. And the first tip is to make your story really relatable. And the process for that is identifying the core message you want to convey, and then find a story that aligns with that message. It could be a story from your own life, from a book, a movie, or perhaps something you heard somewhere. The key is that your story, it has to be relatable. The key word here is relatable. So let me break it down for you. In the beginning of this podcast, I talked about how people don't like it when other people tell them what to do. And to illustrate that point, I talked about teenagers because they make it so obvious that they do not appreciate being told what to do. And also because we all know what it feels like to be a teenager, because we've all been teenagers at one point in time. And this made the story really relatable.
So the first tip is making your story relatable. And our second tip is using emotion in your storytelling, because storytelling isn't just about words. So the more you can connect on an emotional level with your audience, the more memorable and impactful your message will be. So don't just tell the story, live it. And ways to do that could be using vivid language, expressing emotions, letting your audience feel what you felt. And research shows that our recall of content related to emotions is way higher. So the more emotion you bring to the story, the more your audience will connect to it.
True. Okay, so our first two tips for creating storytelling that will be etching your audience's minds are one, making your story really relatable, and two, using emotion in your storytelling. And our third and last tip is engaging your audience while you're telling your story. A great way to do that, it could be asking your audience questions. That's what I did at the beginning of this episode when I asked you several questions like, have you ever had a teenage son or daughter? Or perhaps you remember being a teenager yourself. Do you remember that? And when some adult, perhaps a parent, would tell you to do something, how would you react? Would you do it or wouldn't you? The point is that when you ask people questions, when you're telling your story, you're constantly keeping them engaged in your message. The reason is that when you ask a person a question, the natural response is to think about it. Because as humans, we're culturally conditioned to answer questions. And asking questions keeps up the engagement. Remember, stories connect.
And if you want to learn more about how to create engagement in an audience, listen to our podcast episode number 81. What did we call that? Speaking Secrets to Increase Sales, I think is called episode
Yeah.
81.
I'm pretty sure.
So let's sum up these three tips on how to use storytelling effectively in your business. First of all, make your story relatable, use emotion in your storytelling, engage your audience.
Yes. You know, storytelling is such a powerful tool that can really help you engage your audience and kill emotions within them. And you know, emotions, they drive human behavior and therefore they drive actions. And emotions are also connected to memory. This means that when content evokes emotions, it becomes etched in people's minds, rendering it unforgettable. Pretty cool, right? Stories really do connect.
Yes, stories connect. So, thank you so much for listening to Momentum Maker podcast. Keep your momentum, keep moving forward. And if you happen to be a coach or a course creator spending too much time selling one on one and you're ready to condense time and sell one to many, then open up a tab on your browser and go to elitevirtualstages.com/blueprint and learn how you can turn your expertise into a 6 or even 7 figure day using live transformational virtual masterclasses.